This video we're going to go over some budget midfielders, and this is going to depend on what kind of play style you actually like. We're going to go over about 11 or so midfielders that are under a good budget that you can use inside FIFA 23. We do have access to the web app now as well, so we can get a rough idea of pricing of these players too. Now obviously this will depend a lot on your playstyle like I just said, so if you want a bit more holding midfielders, a bit more midfielders like a pass, attacking midfielders, defensive midfielders, this is where pretty much a lot of the customization of your game comes in, is in midfield, because there's no direct set meta for a midfield, so it's just going to kind of go along with how you want to build your team. But we're going to go over some kind of budget players to get you started, where to start, what kind of players we can use. So we will go through that. If you do enjoy this style of video, don't forget to subscribe. So we'll quickly run through what we have here. So we've got CDMs, CMs and CAMs. We're also looking at gold players because those are going to be the most popular. Now obviously a lot of these players that are in the top few are going to be some of the most expensive players, like Kevin De Bruyne, Casemiro, Kimmich. We've also got Kante, we've got Modric, Kroos, Bernardo Silva, Muller, we've got Verratti as well. Fabinho is actually not too expensive, I checked the price, but he's actually slightly faster than Rodri, and somehow Rodri is more expensive. Maybe it's just because of the fact he's Spanish, I'm not really too sure. Frankie de Jong, a lot of these players, even Thiago, are very, very expensive in this game, so we're trying to get a bunch of players that can be a good balance of price, but obviously give you a good amount of performance as well. Barella is actually quite expensive now as well. I actually thought Barella was going to be a really good budget card, or a reasonable budget card, but he's actually ended up relatively expensive. And Kunku is going to be obviously extremely expensive. And then we've got players like Gundagan, who, to be honest, is actually pretty cheap, but in terms of pace, he's not the best, but it just kind of depends, like I said, what kind of playstyle you're looking for. If you're looking for like a kind of Thiago replacement, then Gundagan's actually quite a solid card overall. We've got players like Nabil Fekir, Foden, Pedri, Gomez, Martins. We've got a lot of players here, even Grealish is pretty expensive. So instead of going through the list, because there's so many midfielders inside football, of course, not only that, inside FIFA, Odegaard actually could be a solid choice too. We're actually going to go straight into the list, just so I could show you what my 11 players would be. And there are going to be a mix and match. Obviously, you can choose some of these players. You can obviously not choose some of the players from the list that I've shown you. But overall, the reason why I've picked them is because they're a good kind of balance in terms of overall stats. So obviously, you could choose them for various different positions. But overall, we do have a ton of options. You could choose whatever kind of players you want here, to be perfectly honest with you. So let's get straight into the list here. So in terms of the list first, what we have, we'll start at the top. We've got Arthur. Now the reason I picked Arthur is because he is a Premier League player now. Obviously he is playing for Liverpool at the moment, and I kind of had to have a Liverpool player on the list. But the reason why I put Arthur here over some of the others is because his dribbling ability is really good. So that is a bonus. His passing ability is pretty solid. His pace is okay, but he's just an overall well-rounded midfielder. He's not really got any amazing stats. The only kind of bad thing about Arthur is his shooting, but you shouldn't really play him any higher up the pitch anyway, so that's only one thing I'd point out. In terms of price-wise, he is pretty cheap too, so he's 650 coins, so you can't really complain too much at the price he is, which is pretty cheap. And if you want to get some chemistry with Liverpool players or Premier League players, then he can actually be a solid choice. Now going back to the list again, we've got Musiala here. We've got a few Bundesliga players, not too many, but we do have a few. Musiala's kind of, again, that kind of middle of the way where he's kind of all-rounded, more developed towards attacking in my opinion. Dribbling ability is absolutely insane. Shooting is okay, passing's okay, pace is pretty solid too. So when it comes to Musiala, overall 1,200 coins is not bad at all for the kind of player you're getting here. You can also play him left mid, you can play him cam as well. I think that is probably where his best position would be cam. But overall, you do have a bit more versatility in terms of positions with this player as well, so that's solid. He's also got 4-star weak foot and 4-star skills, so I mean, definitely a solid choice in player for that reason alone. Then we've got Bissouma, who as a defensive midfielder is actually pretty solid, especially for a Premier League player. In terms of price, On Basuma, we've got him here. So 750 coins, absolutely a cheap bargain player when it comes to playing that defensive midfield position. His defending capabilities are really, really solid. And he's got the high attacking work rate, medium defensive work rate, which is a bit odd to be honest, but overall still a solid player when it comes to midfield. So that's the top three. Moving on to Kovacic, I think Kovacic is going to be a really, really solid player. I think a lot of people are going to pick Kovacic, even though he doesn't really have a lot of secondary positions. Overall, he's a very solid player. And in terms of price-wise for Kovacic, we're not looking at anything too expensive either. So 2,000 coins roughly, which is actually a pretty decent amount, considering he's pretty much good at everything besides shooting once again. So very similar to Arthur in a way, but better overall. So obviously if you want a slightly better player, then Kovacic is the way to go. Declan Rice obviously is a centre defensive midfielder. Obviously he's got better defensive stats than Basuma, but his pace isn't as fast as Basuma. But he does have better links because he is English. So let's take a look at Declan Rice's price. So it's very, very similar here, around about 2,000 coins. So we're not looking at anything too expensive, but overall, definitely a good defensive choice. Mason Mount was absolutely a solid card in FIFA 22. So I think he's going to still be a great card in FIFA 23. You could play him cam and you could also play him right wing as well. I think his pace is a bit too slow for right wing personally. And obviously keep in mind he is right-footed, but you can still play him in that position if you need substitutes or whatever. In terms of pricing wise, around about 3,000 coins, which is not too bad. His weak foot ability is 4 stars, so I mean in terms of shooting he will be pretty solid. So is a decent card. Obviously his work rate is high, so that is obviously going to help out an absolute ton. Doesn't matter which part of the pitch you play him in. So Mason Mount's definitely going to be a solid choice in my opinion. Lamar, he's got the pace, he's got the kind of passing ability, and he's also got the dribbling ability. Shooting's not too bad as well. You can play him right mid, left mid, depends on what your formation is, or you can play him centre mid. So definitely a good card. And he's French, so that's going to help out an absolute ton. And obviously he's got the 4-star skills, so 2,000 coins, definitely not bad at all in terms of pricing as well. So definitely another good choice here. Next up, we've got Lima, who actually is just a kind of well-rounded midfielder overall. Bundesliga player, so you can definitely get some good links in with some Bayern Munich or Borussia Dortmund players if you're looking towards that. Overall, definitely very solid player. Pace is pretty solid, all things considered, especially considering he's a centre defensive midfielder. Dribbling's not too bad. Defensive capabilities are insanely good, pretty much up there with some good centre backs. And his passing ability is pretty solid too. So price wise, 5,000 coins. I mean, probably expected, a bit more expensive in terms of what we have on our list. But overall, solid player. It depends on what you're looking for. Like I said, bit more of a defensive midfielder, but you can play attacking as well with that kind of pace. Then we've got Tukameni, who, in my opinion, Real Madrid players are just kind of a bit expensive right now, even though they're not highly rated. But Tukameni is definitely a solid player. Passing ability is decent, shots okay. His passing and pace is relatively average, but defensive abilities are definitely solid, and he's got good dribbling as well. When it comes to price of Tukameni, we're looking at 5,000 coins once again. And he's French, so he's going to have some really good links there as well. He's not really got any good weak foot or 5-star skills, so he is pretty expensive. You're looking at a player that's going to have really high skills. Then we've got Camerengo, who's probably like a cheaper version of Tukameni in a way, but he's got a bit more pace. He's got a bit better dribbling. Defensive abilities are not all there, and his shooting's not quite as good as Tukameni's either. But very similar player. Both play for Real Madrid, of course. And overall, his work rate is really solid though. I think he's got high defensive and attacking work rate, which is definitely true here. He's got 4-star skills, and he's a little bit cheaper at 3,000 coins roughly, so definitely solid choice as well. Then we do have Gavi, finally, who I think is basically like a cheaper version of Pedri, essentially. You can play him centre mid, you can play him right wing or left wing, which is actually really cool, considering not a lot of players can do this, especially for the price he's at. Pace wise, he's okay, he's not great. Shot wise, he's not great either, to be honest. But passing is okay, dribbling is okay. Overall, very average player, but in terms of his work rate, he's definitely got the work rate there as well, so that's solid. He's not really got the skill moves or the weak foot, but for 600 coins, what can you say? Definitely a solid choice of player. Now, these are a lot of budget players, so like I said, they're not going to have absolutely everything you're looking for, but these are some players that will get you started. Of course, there's a lot more midfielders that are probably going to be budget players that are out there, some that have 5-star skills, 5-star weak foots, but this is to give you a good baseline of some kind of mid-tier midfielders that have a little bit of everything. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe, and thank you very much for watching.